Arthur lived in a small town nestled beside Whispering Woods. His house, once filled with laughter, now echoed with silence. Martha, his wife, had passed away a year ago, leaving a hole in his heart and an emptiness in his home. He spent his days tending to his small garden, each flower a painful reminder of Martha's green thumb. The paint on the house was peeling, mirroring the way Arthur felt inside, worn and faded. He was a kind man, but grief had turned him inward. Each morning was a struggle to get out of bed, each meal a solitary affair. The world outside his window seemed vibrant and full of life, but Arthur felt disconnected, like a ghost drifting through his own existence. Little did he know, the quiet rhythm of his lonely life was about to be disrupted by a knock on the door, a knock that would bring with it a whirlwind of change and a renewed sense of hope. Each day unfolded much like the last. Arthur would wake with the sunrise, the empty space beside him in the bed a constant reminder of Martha. He'd make a pot of weak coffee, the smell doing little to lift his spirits. Breakfast was usually a piece of dry toast, eaten in silence at the kitchen table. The garden was his main occupation. He'd weed, prune, and water, meticulously caring for Martha's beloved roses, though the joy he once found in it was now replaced with a dull ache. Sometimes, he'd sit on the porch swing, watching the world go by, but never truly participating. He'd see children playing in the park across the street, their laughter a sharp contrast to the quiet sorrow that enveloped him. Evenings were spent reading old books, the words blurring before his eyes as he drifted off to sleep, only to relive the same memories in his dreams. It was a simple, repetitive life, a carefully constructed routine designed to keep the pain at bay, but failing nonetheless. The storm rolled in without warning. Dark clouds gathered overhead, and the wind howled through the trees, rattling Arthur's windows. Rain lashed against the glass, blurring the outside world into an indistinct gray. The power flickered, then died, plunging the house into darkness. Arthur lit a kerosene lamp, its flickering light casting long, dancing shadows on the walls. The storm intensified. Thunder boomed, shaking the house to its foundations. A branch snapped off a nearby tree, crashing to the ground with a loud thud. Arthur huddled in his armchair, a blanket pulled tight around him, feeling a strange mix of fear and a perverse sense of comfort. The storm seemed to mirror the turmoil within him, the chaotic emotions he kept buried deep inside. He wondered if the storm would ever end, if the sun would ever shine again. He had no idea that the storm was not just outside, but also a prelude to a change about to blow through his life. The storm raged on for hours. Just as Arthur started to drift off, lulled by the rhythmic drumming of the rain, he heard it. A faint knock. At first, he thought it was just the wind, or perhaps a branch tapping against the door. But then it came again, a little louder this time, a hesitant rap that cut through the storm's fury. Arthur hesitated. Who would be out in this weather, knocking on his door so late at night? He hadn't had a visitor in months, not since Mrs. Gable from next door brought over a casserole after Martha's funeral. A sense of unease washed over him. Maybe he should just ignore it. Pretend he didn't hear anything. But the knocking persisted, growing more insistent with each passing moment. Finally, with a sigh, Arthur rose from his chair. Curiosity, or perhaps a flicker of long-dormant compassion, compelled him to investigate. He grabbed the lamp and shuffled towards the door, his heart pounding in his chest. Arthur fumbled with the lock, his hands trembling slightly. He took a deep breath and slowly pulled the door open, the hinges groaning in protest. The wind immediately howled through the gap, causing the lamp to flicker wildly. He held it aloft, peering into the darkness. And then he saw them. Two small figures huddled on his doorstep, shivering in the rain. They were no older than 8 or 9, a boy and a girl, twins perhaps. Their clothes were thin and soaked, clinging to their frail bodies. Their faces were pale and gaunt, their eyes wide with a mixture of fear and exhaustion. The little girl clutched her brother's hand tightly. They looked like lost birds, blown off course by the storm. Arthur's heart clenched. He hadn't seen such vulnerability in a long time. He had been so consumed by his own grief that he had forgotten that there was suffering in the world beyond his own. "Please," the little boy whispered, his voice barely audible above the wind. "Can you help us?" Arthur, stunned, could only stare at them. "Who are you? What are you doing out here in this storm?" he finally managed to ask, his voice hoarse. The little girl spoke this time, her voice trembling. "We're Leo and Luna. Our parents are gone. We don't have anywhere to go." Tears welled up in her eyes, and she squeezed her brother's hand even tighter. Leo added, "We've been trying to find somewhere safe, but the storm made it hard." He coughed, a racking sound that shook his small frame. "We're so cold and hungry." Arthur looked at their thin faces, their ragged clothes, their desperate eyes. The words, "parents are gone," echoed in his mind. He knew what it was like to lose everything. He knew what it was like to be alone. He couldn't just leave them out there. Come in," Arthur said, his voice regaining some of its strength. He stepped back, gesturing for them to enter. "You can't stay out there in this weather." Leo and Luna hesitated for a moment, then cautiously stepped inside, their eyes wide with apprehension. Arthur quickly closed the door behind them, shutting out the wind and rain. The sudden warmth of the house seemed to envelop them, and they visibly relaxed a little. "You must be freezing," Arthur said, his mind racing. "Let's get you both warmed up." He led them into the living room, the flickering lamplight illuminating the space. The room was simple, but clean and tidy. A fire crackled weakly in the hearth, providing a small amount of heat. Despite his own meager resources and the uncertainty of the situation, Arthur felt a surge of determination. He didn't know how he was going to help these children, but he knew he couldn't turn them away. The memory of Martha, always willing to lend a helping hand, spurred him on. He would do what she would have done. He would offer them shelter. "Sit down by the fire," Arthur instructed, his voice gentle. "I'll see what I can find for you to eat." He hurried to the kitchen, his mind a whirl of possibilities. He didn't have much food in the house, but he knew he had to offer them something. He rummaged through the pantry, finding a can of tomato soup and a loaf of stale bread. It wasn't much, but it would have to do. He heated the soup on the stove, the savory aroma filling the small kitchen. He sliced the bread, then toasted it over the open flame of the stove, hoping to make it more palatable. When he returned to the living room, Leo and Luna were huddled close to the fire, their eyes fixed on the flames. He placed the bowls of soup and the toasted bread on the coffee table. "Here you go," he said. "It's not much, but it's warm." The twins looked at the food with undisguised hunger. They picked up their spoons and began to eat, their small hands trembling slightly. They ate quickly, ravenously, as if they hadn't eaten in days. Arthur watched them, his heart aching. He realized just how desperate their situation must have been. Once the soup bowls were empty and the last crumbs of bread had been devoured, Arthur noticed how exhausted the twins looked. Their eyelids were heavy, and they were starting to nod off, despite their best efforts to stay awake. "You two must be worn out," Arthur said gently. "Let's get you to bed." He didn't have a spare room, but he could make up a bed for them on the living room floor. He gathered some blankets and pillows from the linen closet, trying to choose the softest ones he could find. He spread the blankets out on the floor near the fire, creating a makeshift bed. "Here you go," he said. "It's not much, but it's warm and dry." He noticed their clothes were still damp. "I don't have anything that would fit you," he said apologetically, "but you can borrow some old shirts of mine. They'll be a bit big, but they'll be warmer than what you're wearing." He found two of his softest flannel shirts and handed them to the twins. As they changed, Arthur noticed just how thin they were, their ribs showing through their skin. It broke his heart. He knew he had to do more than just give them a warm place to sleep for the night. He had to help them. The next morning dawned gray and overcast, but the storm had passed. Arthur woke early, his mind already racing with plans. He knew he couldn't keep Leo and Luna forever. He was an old man, struggling to make ends meet himself. He needed to contact the authorities, find them a proper home. He quietly got out of bed, trying not to disturb the twins, who were still sleeping soundly on the floor. He made himself a cup of coffee and sat at the kitchen table, staring out the window. He knew he should call social services. It was the right thing to do. They would be able to provide the twins with the care and support they needed. But as he reached for the phone, he hesitated. He pictured their small, frightened faces, their desperate eyes. He imagined them being taken to a cold, impersonal institution, surrounded by strangers. He couldn't shake the feeling that he was the only person who cared about them, the only person who would truly understand what they had been through. A battle raged within him, between his sense of responsibility and a newfound, unexpected protectiveness. He made a decision. He wouldn't call social services, not yet. He would spend the day with Leo and Luna, get to know them better. Maybe then he could make a more informed decision. When the twins woke up, Arthur offered them some cereal for breakfast. As they ate, he asked them about their lives before their parents passed away. They spoke hesitantly, their voices soft, but gradually they began to open up. They told him about their old house, their school, their friends. They talked about their parents, their laughter, their love. After breakfast, Arthur suggested they help him in the garden. Leo and Luna eagerly agreed. Leo helped him weed the flower beds, his small fingers surprisingly adept at pulling out the unwanted plants. Luna, meanwhile, started drawing pictures in the dirt with a stick, creating intricate patterns and designs. As they worked, Arthur felt a warmth spread through him, a feeling he hadn't experienced in a long time. The garden, once a symbol of his grief, was now filled with laughter and life. Later that afternoon, Arthur discovered other talents. The old cuckoo clock in the hallway, which had been silent for years, suddenly sprang back to life, its tiny bird popping out to announce the hour. Leo, with a twinkle in his eye, proudly took credit. He'd taken it apart and put it back together, he explained, after finding it in a box in the attic. Luna, meanwhile, found a piece of charcoal in the shed and started drawing on a discarded piece of cardboard. Her hand moved with surprising skill, creating a detailed portrait of Arthur's old dog, Buster, who had passed away years ago. The likeness was uncanny, capturing Buster's gentle eyes and floppy ears perfectly. Arthur was amazed. These children were not just survivors, they were talented and resourceful. He started to see them not as burdens, but as individuals with unique gifts and potential. The thought of sending them away became even more unbearable. He felt a growing sense of responsibility, not just to provide them with food and shelter, but to nurture their talents and help them thrive. News travels fast in a small town. Soon, everyone knew about the old widower who had taken in the orphan twins. Some neighbors were supportive, offering Arthur words of encouragement and small gifts of food and clothing for the children. Mrs. Gable, the same neighbor who had brought the casserole after Martha's funeral, offered to help Arthur navigate the complex paperwork involved in becoming a legal guardian. Others were more skeptical. They whispered behind their hands, questioning Arthur's ability to care for two young children at his age and with his limited resources. They worried about the impact the twins might have on the quiet, peaceful neighborhood. Some even suggested that Arthur was simply seeking attention, trying to fill the void left by his wife's death in an inappropriate way. Arthur tried to ignore the gossip, focusing instead on the needs of Leo and Luna. But the whispers stung, reminding him of his own inadequacies and the challenges that lay ahead. He knew that raising these children would be the hardest thing he had ever done, but he also knew that it was the right thing. He just hoped he was up to the task. Flashback. Years ago, Arthur and Martha sat on the same porch swing, the one that now creaked with disuse. They were younger then, full of dreams and hope. They had been trying to have children for years, but without success. They had seen doctors, tried different treatments, but nothing seemed to work. The disappointment weighed heavily on them, casting a shadow over their otherwise happy marriage. "Maybe it's just not meant to be," Martha had said softly, her voice tinged with sadness. Arthur had taken her hand, squeezing it gently. "Maybe," he replied. "But we'll always have each other." They had considered adoption, but the process seemed daunting and expensive. Besides, they had reasoned, they were happy just the way they were. They had each other, their friends, their garden. They didn't need children to complete them. But deep down, Arthur had always felt a pang of regret, a sense of something missing. He had always imagined himself as a father, teaching his children to ride a bike, reading them bedtime stories, watching them grow. Now, looking at Leo and Luna, he wondered if fate had finally given him a second chance. End flashback. Arthur made up his mind. He was going to become Leo and Luna's guardian. He knew it wouldn't be easy. There would be paperwork, interviews, and inspections. He would have to prove that he was a fit and capable caregiver. But he was determined to do whatever it took. He sought out Mrs. Gable, who, true to her word, connected him with a kind, elderly lawyer named Mr. Abernathy. Mr. Abernathy listened patiently to Arthur's story, his eyes twinkling behind his spectacles. He explained the legal process, outlining the steps Arthur would need to take. The paperwork was daunting, filled with complicated legal jargon. Arthur struggled to understand it all, but Mr. Abernathy patiently guided him, explaining each form and answering all his questions. There were home visits from social workers, who inspected Arthur's house and interviewed him and the twins. Arthur worried that they would find him lacking, that they would deem him unfit. But Leo and Luna charmed everyone they met. They were polite, well-behaved, and clearly attached to Arthur. They spoke of him with affection and gratitude, describing how he had given them a home and a sense of security. Their genuine love for Arthur shone through, convincing the social workers that he was the best person to care for them. With the legal hurdles cleared, Arthur enrolled Leo and Luna in the local elementary school. It was a small school, just a few blocks from Arthur's house. The other children were initially curious about the new twins, whispering and pointing as Leo and Luna walked into the classroom. Leo and Luna, still shy and reserved, struggled to fit in at first. They were behind in their studies, having missed a lot of school after their parents passed away. The other children teased them for their old clothes and their hesitant answers in class. Luna, especially, was sensitive to the teasing and often came home in tears. Arthur did his best to comfort them, reminding them of their strengths and talents. He helped them with their homework, patiently explaining concepts they didn't understand. He talked to their teachers, who were understanding and supportive. Gradually, Leo and Luna began to adjust. They made a few friends, started to participate more in class, and began to feel like they belonged. The school, which had once seemed intimidating, started to feel like a safe and welcoming place. Arthur found himself doing things he hadn't done in years. He started attending school events, cheering on Leo and Luna at their school plays and sporting events. He went to parent-teacher conferences, listening attentively to the teachers' feedback and offering his support. He even volunteered to help out with school fundraisers, baking cookies and selling raffle tickets. He rediscovered a sense of community he had long forgotten. He started talking to other parents, sharing stories and experiences. He made new friends, people who accepted him and the twins without judgment. He realized that he wasn't alone, that there were other people in the world who cared about him and wanted to help. The school, which had once been just a building where Leo and Luna spent their days, became a hub of social activity for Arthur. It was a place where he felt connected, valued, and appreciated. He realized that Leo and Luna weren't just changing his life at home, they were also changing his life in the wider world. They were bringing him out of his shell and helping him to reconnect with the community he had once shut himself off from. One day, the school's old computer lab broke down. The computers were outdated and constantly malfunctioning, making it difficult for the students to complete their assignments. The principal, Mrs. Davison, was at her wit's end, unsure how to fix the problem. Leo, overhearing Mrs. Davison's frustration, offered to take a look. With Arthur's permission, he spent an afternoon in the computer lab, tinkering with the machines. To everyone's surprise, he managed to fix several of the computers, identifying and repairing the faulty components. Word spread quickly about Leo's talent for fixing things. Soon, students and teachers were bringing him their broken electronics, from radios to toasters. Leo happily obliged, spending his free time repairing the items and earning the gratitude of the entire school. He became known as the school's little fixer, a title he wore with pride. His ability to help others not only boosted his confidence but also earned him the respect and admiration of his peers, making him a popular and valued member of the school community. Luna's talent for art also blossomed. The school held a local art competition, and Luna, encouraged by Arthur and her teacher, submitted a charcoal drawing she had made of a nearby forest. Her drawing was simple yet powerful, capturing the beauty and tranquility of the natural world. To everyone's delight, Luna won first prize in the competition. Her drawing was displayed in the town hall, and she received a certificate and a set of art supplies. Arthur beamed with pride as he watched Luna accept her award, her face flushed with excitement. The recognition of Luna's artistic talent further solidified her place in the school and the community. She began to receive commissions for her artwork, drawing portraits of people's pets and landscapes of local landmarks. Her art brought joy to others, and it gave her a sense of purpose and accomplishment. Arthur made sure that he framed every piece of Luna's artwork that they had in the house. He was so very proud. He had never known that he could feel this much pride. Arthur's house was transformed. The silence that had once pervaded its walls was replaced with laughter, the sounds of children playing, and the chatter of friends. Luna's artwork adorned the walls, adding color and warmth to the rooms. Leo's repaired gadgets hummed and buzzed, bringing life back to forgotten corners. The garden, once a symbol of Arthur's grief, now overflowed with flowers and vegetables. Leo and Luna had helped him plant a variety of colorful blooms, transforming the space into a vibrant oasis. They even built a small birdhouse, which attracted a flurry of feathered visitors. The house, which had once felt empty and cold, now felt like a home, filled with love, joy, and laughter. It was a place where Arthur, Leo, and Luna could be themselves, where they could support each other, and where they could create new memories. The worn and faded paint now seemed less noticeable. It was a house overflowing with love and warmth. It truly felt like a family home. Arthur caught himself smiling more often. He laughed at Leo's silly jokes and marveled at Luna's artistic creations. He found himself looking forward to each new day, eager to spend time with the twins, to watch them grow and learn, to share in their joys and sorrows. The grief that had consumed him for so long began to fade, replaced by a renewed sense of purpose and a profound sense of love. He still missed Martha, of course, but her memory no longer brought him only pain. He could now remember the happy times, the laughter they had shared, the love they had created. He realized that Leo and Luna had not only filled the void in his home but also the void in his heart. They had given him a reason to live again, a reason to be happy, a reason to be grateful. They had shown him that even after the darkest of storms, the sun could still shine. And that sometimes, family is found in the most unexpected of places. He smiled more than he had in years. He felt like a new man. Martha's birthday approached. In the past, Arthur would spend the day alone, visiting her grave and silently mourning her loss. But this year was different. Leo and Luna insisted on celebrating Martha's life. They baked a cake, decorated with colorful frosting and candles. They gathered flowers from the garden and placed them in a vase on the kitchen table. They shared stories about Martha, remembering her kindness, her laughter, and her love. Arthur showed them pictures of Martha, telling them about her life, her dreams, and her passions. He spoke of her love for gardening, her dedication to her friends, and her unwavering support for him. Leo and Luna listened intently, their eyes filled with curiosity and compassion. They visited Martha's grave together, placing flowers on her headstone and whispering messages of love and remembrance. Arthur felt a sense of peace he hadn't felt in a long time. He knew that Martha would have loved Leo and Luna, that she would have welcomed them into their home with open arms. He felt her presence with them, a warm and comforting embrace. Celebrating her life together made the day not one of sadness, but of love. Arthur sat on the porch swing, watching Leo and Luna play in the garden. They were chasing butterflies, their laughter echoing through the air. He smiled, a genuine, heartfelt smile that reached his eyes. He realized that he had initially thought he was saving Leo and Luna, giving them a home, a family, a future. But he now understood that they had saved him, too. They had rescued him from his grief, his loneliness, his despair. They had given him a new purpose, a new reason to live. He had needed them just as much as they had needed him. They had filled a void he thought could never be filled. They had brought love, laughter, and joy back into his life. They had shown him that even in the darkest of times, hope could still bloom. They had become his family, not by blood, but by choice, by love, by fate. And he wouldn't have it any other way. He thought back to the night of the storm. He had been hesitant to open the door. He had been afraid of what he might find. But he was so grateful that he had. That knock had changed his life. Arthur called Leo and Luna over. Together, they walked to the far corner of the garden, near Martha's rose bushes. Arthur had bought a small sapling, a young oak tree, from the local nursery. "Let's plant this tree," he said, handing Leo a small shovel. "It will be our family tree. It will grow as we grow, stronger and taller with each passing year." Leo and Luna eagerly helped Arthur dig a hole, carefully placing the sapling into the ground. They watered it together, watching as the tiny leaves shimmered in the sunlight. As they stood back to admire their work, Arthur put his arms around Leo and Luna, pulling them close. "We're a family now," he said, his voice filled with emotion. "And we'll always be there for each other, no matter what." The three of them stood there for a long moment, bathed in the warm glow of the afternoon sun, watching their family tree sway gently in the breeze, a symbol of their growing love and a promise of a hopeful future. The storm had brought them together, but their love would keep them strong. Years passed. The oak tree grew tall and strong, its branches reaching towards the sky, providing shade and shelter for the garden below. Leo and Luna blossomed, their talents flourishing, their hearts filled with love and gratitude. Leo became an engineer, using his skills to design and build innovative solutions for the community. Luna became a renowned artist, her paintings displayed in galleries around the world, her art bringing beauty and inspiration to countless people. Arthur watched them with pride, his heart overflowing with love. He had given them a home, but they had given him so much more. They had given him a family, a purpose, a life filled with joy and meaning. The knock on the door that stormy night had changed everything, leading him down a path he never could have imagined. And he was eternally grateful for the unexpected gift of family, found in the most unlikely of places. The end.